By the way, since you brought it up, I actually do want to ask a question about Carzzy, and it goes like this. First of all, that's a great anecdote you give because it aligns with one of my lenses for esports, which is I just noticed, I actually think it's not just about esports, it's about competition. I notice when people compete, their personality in the game, how they play, often mirrors who they are as a person outside of the game, and in often humorous and obvious ways once you see this lens. So when you said there that Carzzy outside of the game was always essentially like trying to push the limit of what he could get away with, dude, I think that's the perfect description of how he plays ADC. Because even though you might know I was fairly critical of him, not this year actually, he was pretty good this first year, but the middle years, the ones where it used to look like he inted all the time and he did the classic move, which everyone knows is my number one pet peeve of ADC, which is you could carry the whole fight, but you die too early on. You do the flash in and you die, which obviously, by the way, the joke is like, this is why I'm a complicated person. The joke is my boy Reckless would never do that, but then I don't like it when you're too much of a pussy. So this is why it's a nightmare to follow the League of Legends. So basically, I'll say this. I do think there was years where maybe he was a bit misaligned. The joke is, though, this is why the punchline, in the end, he gets the laugh on me, because in 2023, I actually think he plays the most appropriate style of ADC for a European. Like, the real joke is, if you are, and by the way, even the same examples there, when you saw Reckless try to play Season 8 ADC in 2023, it didn't look great. Carzzy looked actually like an LPL ADC, dude. Like, some of his team fights are amazing, but it was this style, he's pushing the absolute limit. He's getting the absolute max damage out before he gets popped. So what would you say about Carzzy? Because like I say, it shows me there's more to this guy. He isn't just a one-note player, right?
So first thing I'll say about Carzzy is that the way Mad Lions built around him was very, very smart. So, like, the championship winning rosters that they had with Elyoya was the cleanup. It wasn't Carzzy that was playing the cleanup. Carzzy was the guy who was going in, forcing things. You know, sometimes he would die too early, but then they were using Humanoid and Elyoya to basically clean up the fights after he'd kind of play a bit like an assassinated carry. Right?
Yes.
So I think that was a very smart roster construction decision, right? To put Elyoya in kind of that environment, and I think Matt gets credit for that. I would say that. Well, I mean, I always mention the Carzzy story, which is that, you know, when I first came to Europe, I was scouting people for the roster, and I was watching Kasing play solo queue, and there was this guy who was just destroying him in lane. Like, I mean, he was playing Thresh, and like he just 1v2 killed them, like arcane shifting forwards over like Thresh hook, and like he just timing, and I was like, holy shit, who is this guy? I literally, because he wasn't on any of the lists, I was like, who is this? Just a random guy in solo queue? And I thought that this was like, actually I thought this was a Forgiven Smurfs or something like this. Like, and I was like, who is he? And I found out later it was Carzzy, and from that point onwards, I was always like, okay, this is a guy that we need to follow. And the thing about him is he would always push his limits, and there's kind of two modes to Carzzy. I would say that actually, so Humanoid obviously was the primary shot caller, but he was kind of the guy who was making the final snap calls, right? So if there was a decision that needed to be made, this is 2020 Mad Lions, he would be the final one to make the call. But the guy who was doing the majority of the structure was Carzzy. So Carzzy would be like, okay, on mid-wave, I want you to, we're going to contest this mid-wave into Dragon, or let's play side into mid, or let's play mid into side. And then Humanoid would be the one to make the final snap call. He would either reinforce Carzzy's call, or he would overrule him. But essentially, like, the way that these two function, both inside of the game and outside of the game, was like incredible. And he was basically, and that's kind of what he was doing. He was always like providing. He was always providing comms, and he was always kind of involving himself in the comms. And this is a guy who, he didn't show it. He always out to the outside world. He always like to appear as this happy-go-lucky guy and things like this. But when he lost, he would get like frustrated, but he would never show the frustration in front of his teammates. He would never like outwardly like you just have this like moment, you know, like in an anime, you know, where they've just lost like an important game and you see the main character, they like clench their fist and then they're like the next scene he's like happy, good job guys, and things like this is really like what I would say about Carzzy. But what I would say about Carzzy is also he loves to play on the edge, but he needs his teammates to believe in him that this is the right way to play and that he should be playing like this, because that gives him the confidence to like push his limits. And I think if Carzzy is not pushing his limits, I think that takes away a lot of what makes him a good player, because he has some of the best snapshot decision making of like any player. Like, I
mean, when you said the Kobe example, he must be one of the best at having the switch to when to go, right?
Ooh, yeah, but
is his switch just never turned off? Is that the problem? Right.
Yeah, like it's just I think Kobe had a better switch because Kobe would play safer.
Right, fair enough, then. Okay.
But once he made the switch, then he was better. Right. So the situation Carzzy wants is he wants to be asking like many questions and forcing you to respond, and you forcing him to make lots of decisions, right? And the way I think to beat Carzzy earlier in his career is just stall the game out and just make the game as boring as you literally could. And this is actually how I think he lost in EU Masters that year, because he was semi-finalist in EU Masters, I think. But basically the enemy team just didn't fight him. They just like stood there and wave cleared, and then he like played too aggressively, and then he lost, right? And then he like got caught in it. So I think that made it like I think that was what really made him stand out. But I think if you look at him compared to on Mad Lions versus on Vitality, right? Like on Mad Lions, he's only been with Mac as a coach, right? And then he had 2 years with Humanoid and 1 year with Clearly. Him and Hylissang clearly get on really, really well because they've both joined Vitality together. So like it's really telling that his best years have all been with Mac as a coach. And when he went to Vitality, like somebody who plays like this, like if Mac sees you play really aggressively in scrims and sees you run it down in scrims, Mac is never going to go, why the fuck are you running it down in scrims? Like, stop running it down. Mac's going to say, what did you learn? What did you like? So we pushed our limits here, so we ran it down. What do we gain from this, right? What's the purpose of this? What but not in a like passive aggressive way, right? Like, what do we learn? What do we adjust, right? Whereas most coaches won't behave like that, right? Most coaches, if they see you go 0-5 in lane,
tell you don't do it.
Like,
yeah, stop doing that, right?
Exactly. Stop doing that, right? Like, and it's really obvious that that's what was going on in Vitality, right?
I think they sort of neutered him a bit when he was on the team.
Yeah, exactly. And also, you do that enough, and it causes your teammates to lose trust in you, right? Which has a knock-on effect. So to me, it's not surprising that Carzzy was good this year, because a lot of people thought that Carzzy, that Carzzy was kind of washed after he went to Vitality. But to me, Carzzy is the type of guy who, if he's in a good team environment, he's going to be insane. But he needs to be in a good team environment. And he needs to be in a team environment where he can like be himself for better or worse, you know? And I don't mean inside the game, I mean outside the game too. So that's what I would say about Carzzy.
See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.